So that will bring me on to our next presentation, which is gluten-free developments. Now, this is, I actually found out myself recently last year that I had gluten sensitivity, so I was really pleased when they became a client, and also what they're looking at doing. And you'll notice there's actually a whole sample of what they have up the back. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Terry, who's the owner and manager. Now, just to give you a bit of an intro, they're poised to change the lives of millions of celiac and gluten-sensitive people by providing them with innovative gluten-free breads, cakes, and pastries that deliver on taste and texture. Deliver the taste and texture of traditional wheat versions. Please welcome Terry.
Hello everyone. Okay. Would you please now just take out a little sample pack that was on your seat when you came in. Now both of the bread samples in here were made yesterday. Please open the sample bag with the orange dot on the bag. Now this bread was made from a batter rather than a dough, so bakers would not normally call this a true bread. It was made in a small tin because you can only make batter in a tin, as it can't hold its shape without it. It contains dairy and egg, but has no wheat or gluten. Now, if you're not allergic to egg or dairy, you please smell it and taste it if you haven't already started. But yes, I have done a fine food safety handlers course, and we haven't put our grubby fingers on it, so that should be safe. Now, imagine that you've just arrived here this afternoon from your doctor's appointment, and you've been told that you can no longer have anything from your favourite bakery or pizza place or sandwich bar for the rest of your life, or your favourite cake shop. You have celiac disease, a serious reaction to the protein gluten, which is found in all wheat, rye, barley and spelt products. So you go into your supermarket for some gluten-free bread. Now this is what you're now eating from the orange dot. Now, what if this is what you are now eating? Yes, now your choice of breads is down to this and possibly a couple of vacuum-packed versions from Europe made weeks ago and shipped to Australia, or maybe a heavy, cakey frozen loaf from the freezer section. And many of you would be probably familiar with friends in that condition. Now, what if you have a child who can't have real bread? What are you going to give them for their school lunches? And how do you tell them that they can't go to parties anymore and eat the food, the party food there? And when you go out to eat at cafes or restaurants or even friends' places for a meal, first you have to spend time grilling the chef to see if any of the food is likely to be contaminated with wheat flour. You can no longer eat from fast food outlets or most takeaways. You can no longer go to the pub for a beer, nor eat 80% of what's on supermarket shelves. How are you feeling about life? Okay, the bread sample that you just had has been made without gluten and is currently the best that the industry has to offer from the most widely distributed food brand in Australia, which is Goodman Fielder. There are other locally made gluten-free bread samples on the table at the back for you to sample later. Now, this is the reality for 1 in 90 in the population. Those with celiac disease. Now, though they only currently represent about 1% of the population, it is the most serious of the gluten-avoiding groups. This is the non-negotiable group. Even a crumb in their food will make them sick, and it can take them weeks to recover. Now, it's an insidious disease as it causes a range of other problems. Some of them are fatal. An estimated 240,000 Australians, 3.4 million Americans, and over 14 million globally currently have the disease. Now, you just have to have the gene which predisposes you to the disease, and then have a diet that includes wheat, rye, or barley. Now, for celiacs, gluten damages the small intestine lining, as in the top photo, where the villi, that's those little finger-like things that usually absorb your food, they've been flattened out, preventing you from absorbing the nutrients from the food. The photo below is what it should look like with no disease. As you can see, there is a big list of symptoms and conditions associated with the disease, and the list seems to be constantly increasing. However, the largest group, the largest gluten-avoiding groups are those with gluten sensitivity. Now, some medical experts are predicting up to 50% of the population either have it or will develop gluten sensitivity in the coming years. Now, gluten sensitivity has many of the symptoms of gluten intolerance or celiac disease, but the gluten does not actually trigger the body's immune system, which causes the gut damage leading to malnutrition or milk intolerance and a variety of cancers. Now, doctors currently have a hard time working out what is actually causing what. Are these symptoms causing the disease, or are there other conditions leading to these symptoms? And if the biopsy comes back negative for celiac disease, then the diagnosis is usually gluten sensitivity. And symptoms are relieved by cutting back gluten or going off it totally. Now, a warning, if you currently experience any of these symptoms and they are of concern to you, please don't take yourself off gluten without seeking medical advice. If you do, you run the risk of masking the disease, which makes it harder for the doctors to diagnose you down the track, and you leave yourself vulnerable to traces of gluten causing permanent damage to you over time. Now, currently, gluten-free sales in Australia are around 85 million per annum, but only 20 to 25% of celiacs have actually been diagnosed. It's only 1% in the US, and the market is growing at 25 to 30% annually. Most of the growth is not celiacs, but those with gluten sensitivity. Now, the wheat industry is only just starting to take notice of the seriousness of the problem and its potential to drastically affect wheat production and sales nationally and globally, though some are still hiding their heads in the sand at this stage, thinking the problem is just a few thousand celiacs. Some are hoping that new strains of wheat may be developed that are more friendly to our digestive and our nervous system, but many have been searching alternative grains and seeds to replace wheat. But the problem is, for centuries, wheat has been our cheapest, easiest to grow, easiest to mill, to process, to bake with. It's the tastiest energy-giving carbohydrate in the Western world, and it gives the most variety of foods. This has all been possible because of gluten, the stretchy protein that gives breads and pastries all their wonderful variety. What can replace these and keep these benefits? We have the product to bridge that enormous gap between current gluten-free bread offerings and the expectations of those who are used to eating experience used to the eating experience of wheat breads. Now, would you open your second sample bag, please? The one with the green dot, yes. And smell it and taste it. Now, this one's got no gluten, but it hasn't got any dairy or eggs either. Now, it was made with a true dough rather than a batter, and so is recognised by bakers as actually a true bread, even though it has no wheat, rye or barley or gluten in it. Now, this is the result of some 16 years of research and testing. We've won an Inventors Award for it, and we've tested it extensively now in the marketplace over the past 2 years. We've tested it in small niche bakeries, with those making breads at home, and at the Melbourne Gluten-Free Expos. We're now ready to roll it out on a serious commercial scale. We're also on the cusp of developing a genuine flaky pastry, which will extend the pastry range enormously and will taste as good as our breads. Please take a moment to read this comment by a baker who has now sold his wheat-based bakery, which he's had for 35 years, and has set up a new gluten-free one based exclusively on our bread mix. He's making a better living from this after just 12 months than he was as a traditional baker. So why is our product so different? Well, during testing, we've used 12 different criteria to help us gauge how our trial breads compared to typical wheat breads, which we used as our standard, our high bar. Now, see the red dotted line? That's the wheat bread standard that everything else has to come up to. Now, this gives us an indication of its likely acceptance with the wheat-eating community. If they like it, so will gluten avoiders. Simple as that. As you can see, we meet or exceed the bar on 8 of the 12 criteria. Our nearest competitor does not reach the bar at all, which was the first bread sample that you tasted. Now, note the areas that we are still low in. Convenience. This is the key to all future growth. The price will take care of itself to some degree as we scale up and can work with thousands of tonnes rather than just a few tonnes a year. We now need broad distribution of the product. Okay, we've had serious international inquiries from bakers in Canada and the US, from a health resort in South Africa, a specialist wine and food distributor in Japan, and many other inquiries from 12 countries and regular viewers from 77 countries. Of course, we can't follow up these approaches yet. We've just had to put them on hold till we have the capacity to respond with licensing and export infrastructure. The USA is very badly serviced with gluten-free baked products. Great Britain has a little more to offer, and Europe has very little fresh baked gluten-free. Our product milestones. There are gluten-free niche bakeries that are now thriving on our product. We have dry mix distributors in most states. We've doubled our tonnage, which means we've doubled our sales in 12 months. We've just signed an MOU to trial the mix in larger wholesale retail commercial bakery that already has 10 existing outlets and franchising on their cards. We sold out of fresh baked breads in the first 2 hours of the Gluten-Free Expo last year. We have a Japanese importer seriously looking and taking it into Japan. We have a new corporate entity to take us into the future. We have investors on board to support our first retail bakery cafe, which will also be our ongoing product testing facility. So it comes down to this. Taste and variety of unrivaled fresh gluten-free breads and pastries, matched with the convenience already available to the wheat intolerant through the food services industry, hospitality industry, the fast food industry, neighbourhood bakeries, the home baking industry, so we offer you an invitation just to join us for more samples and a discussion at the break. Thank you for your time.